Derick. I am your host, Derick Phage, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce my guest today. You know her as Julie Beun of J. Beun Media, but she's done a bit of a pivot since the pandemic began, and she is now the owner of About Face Masks, and she has obviously a very fashionable one. If you know Julie Beun, it has to be fashionable. Julie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? I guess I'm
Doing
socially distanced enough from you that I don't need this, right?
I think so. And we're going to get into that because, as I said, you've done a pivot. But before we
Mhm.
get to that, just how are you dealing with it personally so far?
I've got my recalcitrant and super grumpy 22-year-old living with me, so at least I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and but I find that I'm not sleeping well. Um, Aside from like just trying to get an entire company stood up within a very short period of time, I'm waking up at, I don't know, 3:30 or 4 every morning, and trying to get myself back to sleep. And then sometimes I wake up and I've got like some kind of oppressive thought, and I say, no, you're going to roll over and you're going to reframe this day. You're going to start with a positive thought. So I sort of spend my first half hour just kind of saying, okay, what abundance have you got in your life? What gratitude have you got? Because otherwise it's very easy to, and I'm one of those cyclical thinkers, like I get
Yeah.
on the wheel, and it's very easy to do that right now.
Yeah, no, I understand it completely. I mean, you and I were talking with Mark Sutcliffe
Hmm.
just the other day, and I was telling you I had a tough couple of weeks myself. And you're right. I mean, I think you need to take that time in the morning. Actually, Monica and I get up and we actually just sit in bed for about 45 minutes before we get up and get going, and just have a chat and usually look at some news, but not necessarily COVID central news. We try to look at some news that's positive and find some distractions. And I think we're all certainly looking for some distractions. One of the reasons I wanted to do this show is, just to show people that, we still have that connection, even though we can't see each other, face to face, we can still have that connection that we really need, right?
Yeah, it's really smart to do this too. And you see it blossoming more and more online. And I think that it's going to become a feature of our lives going forward, especially as we try to loosen the restrictions and then, expect a second wave and all that sort of stuff. But I think that that human connection is something that is a lot of people at this point, especially early on, it's like the introverts were like, oh, now you want to do entertain ourselves. But now it's
You're
like
right.
it's not really funny even more. Even introverts need contact, and I think having conversations with people, reaching out, forcing yourself out of your isolation in a digital way is really, really critical.
Yeah, and I know, Julie, that J. Bewan Media, your media company, obviously that business has dried up.
Mhm.
However, you woke up one day and you decided to do a pivot, and it was coming from a very good place. Tell us how you've done that pivot with About Face Masks.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
That's what I'm here for, Julie. I'm a
uh,
professional. They used to pay me for this.
they will again. You're too good of a resource. Yeah, so after about 4 days of anxiety of seeing my contracts evaporate, because although there's crisis management, communications, and all that sort of stuff, the kinds of stuff that I do is celebrational. So, if there's an event, I'm your PR, marketing, communications go-to, and the events dried up. So we have to think of something else. And so after about 4 days of anxiety, I saw a friend of ours, you know her, Sharon Bosley House,
Yeah, of course.
uh, had thrown her hat in the ring with uh, Abbas Addis. Can't remember his last name. Anyway, that's shameful. But
No, that's okay. I know who you mean.
Yeah, Operation Ramazay. So basically, he owns a lot of restaurants, and he got all the groceries from the various restaurants, and was like, "Well, this is perishable stuff. Let's do something with it."
Right.
So he invested in creating a charity to get food to vulnerable seniors or people who their income dried up because they had to stay at home. And I wanted to do something because I feel like, when they say when you're depressed, you should exercise, that's
Yeah.
just like part of it. Part of it, that's your physical well-being. But the other part of it, your emotional and psychological well-being, is acting positively and creating a bubble of positive energy. Even if you don't actually get it back from people, you
Yeah.
are generating it. And that is really critical. So I thought, I want to do something, but I've got two sets of senior parents who I do the groceries for. And so I've got, a contact issue that I don't want to create for them.
Of course.
So I
Yeah.
thought, so I thought, I was reading stories about these seniors who were getting to the grocery store and then crying in their car
I
because
read some of those too. Yeah.
they were too terrified to get out. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. Part of my language.
You can
And
do
I
that on this show.
so I thought, all right, challenge accepted. So I thought, okay, no, I can do something about that. So I started making face masks and giving them to share and to distribute. And before too long, I thought, okay, no income, but spending money on fabric, that's not going to work. So somebody said, are you selling them? And I'm like, yeah, sure I
I
am.
am now.
And so
Yeah.
I started selling them. And so every third mask is donated. So I could actually, now it's gone to the point where I'm on my way to go and interview a third full-time sewer. And these are all people who, uh, two of them are immigrants. One is Syrian family who came here in September, and he's a tailor, she's a substitute teacher at Gloucester High School, and their
Okay.
entire income evaporated, and they're not eligible for the CERB payments. So I'm actually replacing, like, if they are able to hit the marks that we've set and mutually agreed upon, he's going to be able to support his family throughout the duration of this. I've also done this for another chap who's an older guy who is very talented sewer, and is private cleaning, has his private cleaning company that also dried up.
Yeah.
So I'm replacing income for people who are really in need of it. Um, and in addition to that, I've got senior people sewing for other seniors. So people who do
Amazing, Julie.
quilting and that kind of thing. So all the donations are coming through this whole system of, I'm either paying people to sew them and then we're recouping our material costs,
Right.
or engaging with seniors who basically just want to support other seniors and people who are in a more vulnerable position.
I think it's pretty fascinating too. You mentioned, sewing and knitting and quilting, and if you follow sort of social media, and even, we have an email service in our neighborhood, and people are setting up like workshops and doing, Skype workshops and Zoom workshops. Monica's doing an online art workshop like that, has just been fantastic. So I think we're kind of going back in time a little bit, right? And
Yeah.
starting to enjoy some of those things that used to occupy our time. Simple things like board games and puzzles, and then of course, as I mentioned, knitting and quilting and sewing. It's actually quite refreshing, isn't it?
You bring up a really interesting point, Derick, and it's something that's occurred to me as this is unfolded. You and I are of the vintage where we grew up with stories from the wartime and, eating spam for breakfast for
Yeah.
this. Those things were left over from a period of austerity, and fish on Friday and powdered milk. I mean,
Oh
right?
yeah, powdered potatoes. You remember
Powdered
those?
potatoes.
Oh,
That was all left over from a period of austerity brought about by the war and the war effort. Now, people put up with that crap because we mobilized an entire world to behave and think in a certain way for a certain outcome.
right.
And we're doing the same thing now. It seems oh so easy just to sit on your couch, but 6 weeks, 8 weeks in, it's tough, right? People are suffering.
Yeah.
So I think, like, going back to my point about positive action, you know, those who can at this point, those who have got the skills to contribute in a meaningful way, and skills that are kind of like the lost skills of home ec, like
Yeah.
cooking and sewing and knitting, those things are invaluable. And I'm so glad that we're putting a focus and importance on them once again, because, you know, kids are not interested. Some kids are. I can't make a sweeping statement, but most kids are not interested in learning how to sew or knit or
Yeah, no,
cook.
you're right. I would agree with that. I would say probably the majority, haven't been interested. But I think
Hmm.
they're becoming more interested now, right? Because there's
Hmm.
only so much time you can really spend on devices.
Right.
And I know a lot of kids obviously do it, and they probably, as you said, for the first few weeks, this is great. I'm going to sit at home, and after my 3 hours of doing some homeschooling, I'm going to do the next 5 hours, playing video games. But eventually, or watching YouTube videos, watching other people play video games. But eventually, I think that gets tiresome, and they start looking for other things. And if they don't have those things, or us, they have to rely on us to be introduced to those things.
Hmm.
I don't think that's great for their mental state.
No, that's exactly true. And you know, we always say we model to our children the behavior that we want to see. And I'm the worst of any. Like, I was always on my phone, like looking, you know, my kids would be like, I'm talking to you. Can you put your phone away? I was the
Yeah.
worst. I'm not saying that's changed a lot, because now it's like
Well, now you're
become
running a new business, right?
right. Right, but all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I tell this story and it's kind of funny, but at the same time it's not. My son is digital native. He grew up in the digital age, and he works for the federal government part-time, and he's a student in public affairs and policy management. So
Okay.
he's, you know, a thought worker. He will be a thought worker, and he's very creative as an artist. So he paints. He does a physical, like a expression of his artistic ability.
Right.
Now, about 5 days, six days after I started doing this sewing thing, um, he came into the kitchen and he said, "You know, Mom, um, most people have an opportunity here to be undirected. They don't need uh, to be directed in what they can do. They can do their own thing. They're not being told you have to be at work at 9 and leave at 5 and you have to do this and that." And he said, for myself, I love the chaos of that, because it means that I can follow my true creative spirit. And I said, yeah, that's very true. And he goes, but look at you, 7 days into the lockdown, and you've started a fucking business from the kitchen table. He said, you can't sit still, can you? And I
It's
said,
so funny because I think you and we sort of share a same personality, but I just went in a totally different direction. I kind of just shut down and
right.
you know what? Some people need to do that. And I think I did. I said to Monica, you know
Mhm.
what? I didn't want to hear, I didn't want to go on social media and tell everybody how I was feeling right away, because I didn't want advice. I didn't want
Yeah.
to hear about, hey, you can get through this and so forth. I just wanted to sit there in my sadness and, feel it and let it just, eventually just,
Yeah.
leave me. And
Yep.
that's almost what I did for 2 weeks. I just distracted myself with, playing video games and
Mhm.
watching movies and watching TV and binging on Netflix and that sort of thing. But again, everybody has a different way of doing that. I needed it, but I also
Yeah.
eventually needed to do this with what I'm doing with you and so many other guests. Actually, I've been overwhelmed with the amount of requests. It's just been
It's
beautiful.
amazing. Everybody wants to talk. And, you know, to talk to somebody who's a professional talker is like, you know, pretty special.
You're referring to yourself, right?
Obviously.
So, where do you see, at the end of all of this, obviously you're going to have to, I guess, pivot back to Jay Beun Media, right? I think we're all going to have to perhaps do that. Some people might not even be able to go back to the job that they once held, right? I think that's a
Yeah.
lot of the anxiety that's happening out there.
And it isn't going to be the same world. You know, the other part of that piece about global action, everybody having to behave in a certain way and mobilizing a population, is the next thing, which is a depression. We're going to go into an economic time of austerity
Yeah.
that's already started. There's, what is it, a 4.8% drop in the US GDP announced this week, which is the
Yeah.
biggest slide in 6 years, which is not surprising. There's going to
No.
be entire industries that will be kneecapped, and there are going to be a lot of people whose jobs were, as my son, the political science student says, are make busy work, right? That
Right.
they're really not producing stuff. They're answering questions for people who probably could just find out the answer themselves or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Interesting perspective.
so there's going to be a big shift, and I think we're going to have to be more self-reliant. As we said on Mark's show the other day, we don't need to buy everything from China.
Yeah.
So maybe we can pull back, and some of those people who have lost their jobs can create energy around local industry that we do really need, or production or whatever that we've given away. And the other piece is, when you say about, what am I going to do after this? It's a really interesting question. Like, and that is the one that wakes me up at 3:30
No, me
because
too, Julie. I have no idea what I'm going to do,
I don't
honestly.
like, I have some work that I'm actually uh, going to be doing in the next couple of months that are small contracts that I'm very grateful for, which means that that's why I have to hire sewers and runners and all that sort of stuff. And a big shout out to Lisa Constantine for Burdog Design, who's been absolutely critical in the standing this entire thing up. She's my back end, which sounds terrible to say, but
I
she's
picture
my
you in a donkey outfit, and you're the
yeah,
head, and she's the ass. Yeah. Okay.
no. uh,
I
my
mean rear. I meant to say
yes, but
rear.
no. No, she's fabulous. But
Yeah.
we were talking about that, and it's kind of like the hustle and the anxiety of an independent consultant is exhausting. And it's great when you're busy, but when you're not busy, you're kind of part-time. The anxiety of how come I'm not busy is acute. So we're having ongoing conversations about what will we do next. Like, this is a time to pause and to say, okay, so what could I reimagine myself doing? Now, I've got a book coming out next February, and I've got another one that my publishing agent is waiting for an outline. I hope he's not seeing this, because I'm ready,
You're
Lloyd.
not you're not there yet, are you?
I'm not there yet, but so but you can't make a living writing books. Basically, those are our passion projects.
Yeah.
But what else could I do? What else? I've had many hats in my life, and worked all over the world as a journalist and as a publicist and marketing, and I've done a lot of different stuff. But what else is left to do? And it's both comforting to even ask myself that question out loud, to know that I will find an answer, but also terrifying because it may not be a very comfortable answer. So,
Yeah, I
oh,
think that's my biggest concern as well,
mhm.
that, I know I will find something, but am I going to find something that I'm as passionate about as I've been doing for the last 15 years, to do a job that I had, being on a television show and meeting dozens and dozens of new people. I mean,
Mhm.
for someone that has ADD, it's the perfect job, right? Because you go from one guest to the other, one topic to the next. It was just so
Yeah.
exciting, right? And for the last 4 years on Breakfast Television Montreal, it was like 3 hours of that, right?
Yeah.
Like 3 hours of we're just moving. You're chugging along. It feels like 5 minutes at the end of it.
It
Where am
does.
I going? Where am I going to find that energy again? Right?
Now, wait, didn't you start life as a receptionist at your dad's company?
I did,
You know,
and
you were good
interestingly
at it
enough,
too.
what's that?
You were good at it.
I did. I took I really, I really took the job seriously. I honestly wanted to be the best receptionist that anyone's ever had. That's the way I thought about it. And I think it prepared me for television because, as I said, someone with ADD, you've got, the phone's ringing off the hook. People are coming in, off the elevator constantly. You're having these wonderful conversations. You're meeting new people every day. Those years at GGFL, that was 18 years I worked there,
Mhm.
and 13 out of those 18 years I was a receptionist. And I really do give a lot of credit to that job for, training me to interview people because I did mini interviews pretty much, right? Because you know what? I changed my title from receptionist to head of first impressions.
That's great.
Because that's what you are, right? You're the first impression that somebody, when they call or when somebody gets off that elevator, you're an important piece of that company.
I can see you being like the front face of a company where you're making those connections, you're doing business development, you're putting people in the same room together, and for a company that you're very passionate about what they do. I think they should call you El Maestro.
I like it. You know what I wanted to be growing up? I wanted to be a doorman. I remember, so, my dad was a successful businessman. He's actually the F in GGFL. It was originally called Ginsberg, Glusman, Fage, and Levitz, and then they shortened it to GGFL. But, we were very fortunate to be able to go on vacations and,
Yeah.
go to, obviously stay at hotels and so forth. And I just, when you went to one of those nicer hotels and that person was there to greet you and open the door and get anything that you want, I thought, oh my God, wouldn't that be great to meet all these people? And of course, I mean, you'd only be, cheering them up, right? It would be just a positive atmosphere all the time.
Yeah, and you'd know all their secrets too, right? Because you would
Oh
see,
yeah,
boy, you can make a
absolutely.
nice little side hustle on just the secret.
That's right. So I'm just running out of time here, Jules. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to let everybody know how they can get in touch with you if they want to purchase masks, and a reminder that for every 2 masks that get sold, you're donating a mask as well. So this is a great opportunity for people to help out locally.
Yeah, thank you so much. The company is aboutfacemasks.com. We're on Shopify, and we're replenishing. So last week we're sold out. CTV gave us a shout out and completely wiped out our stock, which was
Nice.
great. It meant a lot to me to have that kind of support in the community. And we've just delivered 600 masks to Ottawa Public Health. So that was a big morale booster as well, to know that they saw the value in what we were doing. And yeah, so aboutfacemasks.com, you'll find us on the Internet of Things. And so if there's depleted stock, don't worry. We have busy beavers running their sewing machine night and day. The little mask elves are hard at work.
Awesome. And I should say, too, you can follow Julie, of course, on all social media platforms and find out what she's up to. She has a great sense of humor as well. So if you want a good laugh or you want a little serious sides, sharing some great articles that you find. So Julie, can't thank you enough. I love you, sis.
I love you too, brother.
I will talk to you soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right, take care. And we want to hear from you in the comments below. So let us know what you think of the interviews. Each and every interview, let us know. And if there's another topic you'd like us to discuss on Let's Chat with Derick, please let us know. Take care, everybody, and we'll see you next time.